This is a real honor and treat for me to be sharing time and energy. And those two commodities are precious because we can't buy more of them. So I appreciate you guys unplugging from busy lives to listen to what I hope and get engaged in what I hope will be a meaningful experience. Stress is an epidemic, and long-term stress can cause chronic illness, and it can create big disruption in the quality of our lives. So it's a three-part series, right? They're not really super connected. So if you talk to someone that is not here tonight but wants to come to the second one, they can. They don't have to have attended the first one. But I want to land us in a really good understanding of the mind body connection. What happens when we get stressed and why we get stressed, diving underneath that, looking at our life in a more holistic fashion, and then doing some breakout sessions that will allow us to do some small group work, more discovery, to get a better understanding, better clarity of where you are in the current state, how you feel. And importantly, maybe in that awareness, an idea of where you might want to take some intentional change, taking some action, shifting behavior, being more mindful, maybe introducing some new concepts that you can take truly with you in your life, not just here living in your head tonight learning, but really practical things that you can take with you long after the presentation's over. So I just did probably my first 5 slides, but I love seeing some faces and I really like connecting. And I'll go through, I'm going to screen share and I'll go through these slides pretty rapidly, but I'm going to take pause points because I want to make sure that this is interactive. Everybody, I think, has a pen and a sheet of paper, and we are off to the races. So hang on. Screen share is about to begin. Sharing is now occurring, and I always hold my breath with technology. And here we go. So I share this slide because I think it's often nice to know what motivates a speaker to share and to offer perspective in certain areas. And as Leslie mentioned, Empower Health America is my business, and it's an education and research-based organization. And I have a huge desire to really inspire and empower and share information with people so that they can make better choices about their life. And my hope is that the quality of your life will be impacted in a very meaningful way. And my motivation goes really deep because my parents combined were divorced 6 times. And they were married when I was very young. And my childhood was a little rocky. I kind of felt like the house was built on quicksand. And that is not meant to have you give me sympathy. It's just a real reality of where my life started. And that foundation triggered some pretty unhealthy behavior, anxiety, depression, and things that I have worked through. And I'm so grateful for counseling and education and friends and mentors and seeking ways that I can move my life in a more powerful direction. But it will be an interesting thing as we move through this session is to understand why you are the way you are, but to also realize that you can make changes. It doesn't matter how old you are, to choose to live your life with greater intention. So my drive to do this work comes from my own life's experience and knowing if I can get to the other side of darkness and shed some light to help other people get there faster, that is something I want to do for the rest of my life, which is why I launched my business. And I truly do believe that we can light the world up, not just by doing a job, but really finding something that we're passionate about and really being able to make a difference in people's lives. And my slide that I'm going to go through faster because I already told you is we're going to be looking at awareness and the importance of that, looking at a more holistic way to take inventory of your life. And we're going to certainly look at stress and that mind-body connection, how it affects us. And I hope that we can all leave. And this is a reminder for me every time I do this presentation. I'm like, these are simple things, Terrie, but you've got to remember to do them every day. So my hope is that you really will leave with some things that you can institutionalize immediately, meaning start doing them in your life. So I'm going to introduce the concept of the 4P model. And this is a construct to create a sense of structure to the way the brain processes and the way that we take in information, and also the way we can move through more intentional decision making. And you're going to see this model weaved through the entire presentation. And I'll just start by saying pausing is really important. If we don't take time to pause and take inventory, it's really difficult to process and navigate, to pivot where needed are made, where it is needed that there are pivots made, with the ability to move forward with greater intention. And I'll just liken this to something that happened literally 2 days ago. And some of you guys that were on the call a little earlier, when I mentioned that my and a lot of people in Charlotte's internet was down, and it was on and off and on and off, and I was on and off the phone with Time Warner, and I found myself getting very anxious, and I didn't want to disappoint the 50 people that signed up, and I started to have ruminating thoughts, and that whole anxiety kicked in. And I'm like, Terrie Reeves, pause and breathe, process what's going on, look at the facts, call the Pink House. You are not alone. Leslie and Lynn will drop in, we'll pivot so that we can proceed forward with greater intention. So we'll be putting this framework to use in just a couple of minutes. So this is my first call to action. I would like for everybody to write down in this moment 1 or 2 words and how you're feeling, just whatever comes up for you. Maybe it's tired, maybe it's stressed, maybe it's distracted, maybe it's fabulous, maybe it's relaxed, whatever that word is. And I'm going to give you a second, because this is one of the strategies, and that is truly just pausing and checking in. All right, now I'm going to invite you to get more involved. If you will sit up tall in your chair, close your eyes, and just take a big giant breath with me, and just let it go. Let it go. And just settle. Just settle. I'll invite you to keep your breath deep and full, eyes closed or cast down. And I'm just going to guide you through a meditation for a few minutes. And this is a great strategy, just pausing and breathing to check in. So the act of pausing is very, very powerful. Notice the quality of your breath. Bring attention to your breathing. Most of us shallow breathe into the chest. So if you can inhale for 5 seconds, really expand, pushing that breath deeply in and through the body, maybe even feeling the belly expand. And then exhale equally as slow, maybe even a slower exhale. And just continue the breathing pattern on your own. So you might find that you've landed in your head, and there may be lots of thought. Our brain just focus about every 3 seconds, and it moves faster than a Formula race car. So we process information about 170 miles an hour. So our brain is very powerful. So noticing the thoughts without attaching to them, without any judgment, just awareness. Breathing in and out, just curious. And then I'll invite you to begin to notice the sensation in your body, maybe feeling the chair underneath you. Again, the breath moving in and out of the body. And then taking a scan, which you can do anytime. Just starting at the top of the head and gently and curiously moving your attention through your body, scanning down to your toes and just noticing if there's any tension. And again, without any judgment, just awareness. And let that exhale be a reminder to just soften, to give yourself these moments just to be present. Maybe perhaps moving to a place of greater compassion. We tend to move through life in many ways connected to our thoughts and disconnected to our body. And our body has a language and it speaks to us in the form of sensation. So just noticing, how does my body feel? Breathing in and breathing out. If you get distracted, that's normal. Just come back to your breathing. And I'm going to invite you to place your hands on your heart, palms open, feeling the chest rise and fall as you breathe, and dropping in a little bit deeper, moving to a place of emotion. How are you feeling in this moment? And perhaps you have a mindset of compassion, perhaps feeling your own heartbeat, reminding yourself that you are human. Taking a couple of more deep breaths, just landing in this beautiful, rich place of awareness. And perhaps creating an intention for the next hour and minutes. What is it that you'd like to experience? How can you be fully present? Perhaps grounded in gratitude, together in community, although not physically, but certainly together virtually. Taking a few more deep breaths, breathing in and out. Isn't it funny how life shows up even when we're meditating? The distractions just come in and we can't control the world around us. We can just control the reaction to those things. So funny how life simulates itself, even in an exercise like this. How can I remain calm, connected, grounded? And then just begin to open your eyes. So this is my question for you, is I would like for you to write down, and I would really encourage anybody that can chat to chat, because I would really appreciate it, because I love to hear what people are feeling. You notice that word feeling, not thinking. I would like to know what you're feeling. Is you will, if you'll write in your journal or chat in the chat box how you're feeling now, and maybe compare that backwards to 5 minutes ago, the word that you wrote before we paused and connected and took this wonderful thing called breath and pause and connected those two together. And this is strategy one. How can I, when I'm stressed, check out to check in? Because it's really in this place of self-reflection that we're able to gain clarity. And often we can cultivate this sense of compassion and finding that inner calm. So there really is power in the pause. So I'm gonna see if anybody's chatted. I see I am feeling relaxed and calm from Kathy Goodman. So if anybody else knows how to chat, this is not a fire drill, but if you'll land some of your feelings in the chat box, that would be great. I'm going to keep us moving because we've got a lot to cover, but I just want to mention the power of breathing calms the central nervous system. It allows the parasympathetic nervous system to calm down, and it allows us to move into this space called the stress response, the opposite of that. And when we think about the opposite of the stress response, it's called the relaxed response. And so we can move ourselves from that place of stress to that place of relaxation, and sometimes in just a minute of pausing and breathing. So we think about life, and life is not always smooth sailing. And we know that. COVID, a breast cancer diagnosis, the loss of a mother. I lost my mom a year and a half ago. There are just big, giant disruptions, and we can lose our compass, right? So how can we anchor inward? and use this self-awareness and this self-regulation technique that we just use to deal with that disruption, change those stressful events in a healthier way. So how can this help you navigate through life? Because this greater awareness can help us move through life with greater intention. So we can't control the world around us. We can't control the storms, but we can be more mindful of how we react. And we can be in more control of the destiny. And self awareness really is the first step to intentional change or intentional action. And a quote that I like to quote is, you can only create in your life what you can envision in your mind. So our minds are very, very powerful. I love Carl Jung. He is a psychiatrist and a philosopher. And when we pause and we become more aware, we make the unconscious sometimes conscious. And that is a powerful place to live, in a state of greater awareness. All right, I'm gonna see some thumbs up. Are we doing okay? We're good. Leslie, will you thumbs up? All right, I'm seeing some thumbs up. That's good. All right, Doris Campbell, I'm feeling relaxed. And gentleness. What a beautiful word. Thank you for sharing that. So we move into this thought in and around well-being. And often we think about well-being as exercise, right? Or eating well, but there's so many things that impact our health and well-being. And if you can think about that a little bit broad and look at the physical, the mental, the emotional, and the social well-beings, those are all different aspects of health and well-being, which have lots of things bundled up underneath them. And the intention is, how can I be at peace? How can I feel healthy, happy, and whole based on the things that are really important to me? Because truly, your life is a sum total of how you spend your time and energy. And when we think about how can I gain greater control, not just taking a pause and breathing, that strategy is a good one, but you can literally take inventory of your life. And I'm giving some framework around this because I've done 10 years of research in health and well-being, and have identified 15 different dimensions, life dimensions, that can impact your health and happiness. And my thinking is, how can you try to balance something that you're not aware of? And if you're stressed, how can you become unstressed if you're not aware of what's triggering that? So I'm going to do this pretty quickly because we got a lot to cover, but I just want this to give you hopefully framework that will help you broaden your perspective of what things in your life might be affecting your health and well-being. So I'm going to go quick around this circle. If we look at the top apple, that is nutrition. And I'm going to go to the right. The orange is relaxation. Do I get enough of it? Exercise. Do I have a strong spiritual connection to something greater than myself? What are my habits, good and bad, right? Do I feel a sense of community and connection? Do I feel supported? Do I have a tribe? Do I feel emotionally happy? Am I going to the doctor? Am I proactively taking? How do I feel financially? Do I feel stable? Am I finding enough fun in my life? Do I play? Do I laugh? Or have I put on this adult size seriousness, which sometimes happens? And it's important to keep that laughter, fun, those things in your life that feed your soul active, right? Life balance, that's a scale. My home, does my home feel balanced? Do I feel at peace in my home? The next one is a head with a light bulb, and that reflects, am I growing? Am I learning? Am I seeking to expand my knowledge? The next one is, when I look in the mirror, do I love myself? What do I see when I look in the mirror? My self-esteem. And the next is, do I have a purpose? Do I have a passion, something that really drives me, that fulfills me? And it's not one of these. It's really a sum total of all of them. And based on where you are in your life, one of these aspects may be more important than the other. But my invitation for you at this moment is to look at that circle and just think about, are there a few things that are out of balance? And most people, when I do this exercise, haven't really thought about their life in this many dimensions. So this awareness maybe can help you fine tune and get a clearer vision on where you might be out of balance. And then underneath that question would be, is there an area of your life that's causing you stress? So that is an important thing that will move us into the second phase of our presentation. So I'm going to move us to the next slide, but don't forget to write something down, because it is going to prompt us in our breakout session. All right. So, Leslie, I'm thinking how many people you'll have to share with me, if you can, Leslie, the host capacity. And I will be explaining this breakout as Leslie's doing that. And then we'll all have this opportunity to speak in smaller groups. So, the third strategy, because I'm trying to create this sense of awareness, pause and breathe, take personal inventory of your life. The third strategy is how can I ask myself powerful questions? Now that I'm a bit more aware, how can I get underneath those questions? How can I not necessarily navigate life by myself? How can I rely on other people? How can I find a tribe that may be going through some of the same things? So that sense of community, which I know the Pink House does a great job creating that sense of community, their mentorship program and a lot of the programs that they do that help you guys stay connected, because that's so critically important, especially in times of stress and disruption. So I'm going to ask that you guys write these questions down. Where's your life out of balance? One or two things. What is causing you stress? How is this impacting the quality of your life? All three of those kind of help you dive a little bit deeper, bringing you into a greater sense of awareness. When I move you into the breakout session, for you to pick a group leader who's going to make sure the discussion moves along and that these questions get answered and everybody kind of shares your opinion, your voice, your feelings, and then assigning somebody to come back and report the high level takeaways from the group. And maybe somebody that can, and I'm thinking the person that's probably going to report, maybe the scribe that's actually taking notes so that you can report back. So define that pretty quickly when you get in your groups. I'm going to take us off of screen. I'm going to take us off of share. And I'm going to ask that, are we good? We feel good about the breakouts?
Yes.
All right. Excellent. So I'm going to take us into the breakouts. Somebody said, I enjoy cooking dinner, feeding my dog at the same time. Oh, that's funny. I love your chats. All right. So I'm going to send us away to small groups for 15 minutes. I'd like to have each of the team leads, the person that you maybe voluntold that they were going to report back to the group.
We did volunteer.
I know, right? I was like, I want to talk, I don't know. Oh, that's funny. Hey, and let me ask a question real quick. Where'd Leslie go? Leslie, I think you were only with one other person, right? I will make sure y'all have a tribe surrounding you next time. I didn't realize that. It broke out. The session's kind of wonky. So
That's
next
okay.
time I'll push you into, so y'all got a lot of a one-on-one time.
Oh, it was great. We had a good time.
Awesome. So who wants to start? And I'm thinking like 2-3 minutes, just high level takeaways. And then we'll go through all 4 groups and we'll talk about stress a little bit more. And then we'll move to this solutions place, which is a lot more fun. So we'll get there faster if y'all volunteer faster to talk.
Can I ask a question first?
Yeah.
This is Pam. Are we supposed to give you responses on all 3 questions?
As many as you got to, Pam.
Okay, because if we didn't get to one,
that's all right.
Okay.
There's no wrong or right. We are not living in a world of absolutes tonight. It's either or, both and, whatever way you want to take it.
Right.
So do I have a brave soul that will volunteer to share your collective consciousness?
Yes, I'll start.
Okay.
If you want me to.
Yeah.
So I jumped in with I was with Doris and Denise, and they are both have just been dealing with Denise, the reconstruction and getting through all of that, and then Doris also has just finished having her, has finished her double mastectomy and all of that. And I think y'all are incredible and any of you who have been going through this during this time, it's like a double whammy. So since I'm 17 years out, I have it, and I'm so blessed to be there. I have a sort of a different perspective, but I can identify with them. So here's the thing, stressful things. To begin with, on the breast cancer thing, both of them, all of us had said it's hard to have that on top of everything else. And it's good that they've both finished, and and it's the same thing even after 17 years that I'm blessed. I'm feeling great, that I'm so blessed, but it just, to have to deal with that, and then have this hit, it diminishes your joy of the journey of where you are. And so that's stressful in itself. Right, Denise? I mean,
Yeah, I would
you
say that, yeah, because you're grateful, but just the stress of this general
thing,
I kind of almost like a malaise of this continuing pandemic.
right?
Mhm.
So that, and then other stressful things, husbands are stressful.
We should say generally relationships, and then we don't have to pick on our husbands, but
There
during
you go, relationships. You're stuck in the house with them. And I was talking about at Gene, bless his heart, he's listening to me, I'm sure. I had 38 wonderful years of marriage, but I lost him 9 years ago. But how well I remember some of our stressful times. And I said to the girls, I said, if Gene had been here with me, I would have had a very stressful time right now. So, and I think that what we agreed was that you get into the Mars and Venus with husbands and wives, and it gets blown up when you're shut up in the house with each other and everything. And so that's one thing. And then also having a 21-year-old granddaughter. Doris has that. And I said, I can't imagine having a teenager right now with trying to control all of that. My grandchildren are younger, and that's been hard too with the school stuff and all that. And I think for me as a grandparent, I feel that with my children, and I tend to take their stress on, of what they're having to go through. We agreed that generally what is out of balance, everything. Everything's out of balance. One thing affects another. And so one thing you can have, this is my perception, is I can think I've got some balance on something, and then all of a sudden it goes wacko too. And so then you're grabbing again for another anchor to kind of get you on through. And I think I feel that neighbors, friends that I've talked to said the isolation of not being able to be with people, and certainly for some of you all, but not being able to be at the Pink House has bothered me a whole lot, because I'm usually there a lot, and I usually go now to water the orchids and do that stuff when nobody's there. And it's just, but the things we've done have been good. And so, but I have to say that I'm so proud of every survivor that's on here, no matter how many years out. And I don't know whether we have all survivors or we have somebody else, Terry, somebody that, is everybody a survivor?
I'm not.
Okay. Who said that?
That's my friend Judy.
Oh, good. Okay. Well, I was hoping we had some that, I figure we had a mix. So that's it. Missing exercise, we used to exercise a lot more. Just a lot of things that we can't do as much, causes even more stress.
So we'll talk a lot about the capacity of holding two truths, that I'm going through some really rough stuff right now, and owning that and giving yourself compassion and knowing that things just might suck, right?
Right.
to use a very, very frank word. But to own two truths in your heart means to also, in that same statement, to go, but I also have a tribe of people who are in my foxhole with me. And if I'm feeling down, I can pick up the phone and call somebody. I might not be able to get might not be able to get a physical hug, but I can certainly get a virtual hug from a friend. And often when we get into these high stress times with COVID that's created so much disruption, we can lock ourselves into absolute thinking. And it could be that we're pushed to this place of all or nothing. And what it does is it gives us this beautiful opportunity to reframe the way we're living our lives and to not just look at the boulder, but to ideate and get creative on how I can get around the boulder. And great creativity is spawned often when we're in these deep moments of disruption. And certainly a breast cancer diagnosis, whether you had it years ago or this moment, is a significant disruption. And then you layer COVID on top of it, and you layer husbands right next to you and taking on the, additional stress of maybe children. There's a lot, but I would offer this up. You can't control the uncontrollables. So if you can let go of the things that you cannot control and focus on the things that you can, it's not a perfect solution, but I guarantee you can cut half the luggage that you're dragging around and lighten your load. And so those are just a few things, as I'm hearing Pam share, that I thought I would serve up as, things to consider. And in the interest of time, I'm going to ask each of the other groups. I definitely want to hear. And maybe just keep it to 2 minutes. And what you'll find, no, Pam, you were the first one. So you had a lot of stuff to say. You'll find some overlaps, and you can certainly say ditto for Pam on that, ditto for Pam on that. These are a few other things that came up for our group that would be kind of unique and add on to the first share. So if the second person that will share, I would be delighted to turn over the floor to you.
I'll go. It's Judy.
Hey, Judy, thank you for going.
So you put us together just right, because there were 5 of us and 3 finished talking. The 4th one started to talk, and I never got an opportunity to speak, but all 5 of us are stressed because of our jobs, all 5. So, and for different reasons. And then it's difficult to have the stress of a job and then combine that with COVID and the lack of friends and, everything that Pam had just said.
Yeah. Isolation is something that can drive anxiety and move us closer to despair, because we feel that lack of human interaction, and we're human beings and we're intended to be in community. So our next session, we'll be talking a lot about how we can pivot and begin to introduce some new ways of thinking and maybe shift our mindset a little bit. And we'll move into some breakouts about how we can manage through some of this, and we'll get creative together. It's going to be a lot of fun. But I first wanted to just make sure that we're aware of what's driving stress, because we can't navigate around it unless we're really clear, and we can't prioritize. If we don't prioritize, we might look at many things out of balance. So part of this is to begin to really prioritize. We can't build Rome overnight, but what are the 1 or 2 things I really want to focus on? What's really driving great imbalance and maybe really putting the accelerator pedal on the stress. So Judy, had you finished? I want to make sure I didn't cut you off.
No, that's all I had to say, because we didn't do the next layers.
That's okay. That's okay. So how about the other 2 groups? Leslie, you're waving your hand.
Yeah, I'll go ahead and share for our group. I had the pleasure of being on with Mary Ida, and it was just the 2 of us, and we had a nice time. She just waved at everybody. She just answered the question so perfectly. How is your life out of balance? She said that she is 2/3 of the way to feeling better after her breast cancer diagnosis 6 years ago. She had chemo, radiation, and a lumpectomy, and she has been on medicine for quite a while. And back in November, she just recently got off of her medicine. So she's really close to feeling balanced again after her breast cancer diagnosis. And she did have a recent biopsy in November that was benign. That was unexpected. So she's very thankful that that went okay. And as far as what causes stress, of course, the biopsy caused stress. They downsized from a 3,000 square foot house to a 1,200 square foot apartment. And they sold their house, they moved, they got rid of stuff, and then they were getting settled. And then on the day that they moved, her husband had an emergency appendectomy and at the Cleveland Clinic. And so he's doing well now, but you add all that into the pandemic that was going on, and that was a lot to deal with. And what improves her quality of life is her 4-year-old nephew that they are living closer to now. And they just got their second COVID vaccine today. So hopefully they'll be able to spend more time with their nephew. And still having her husband with her. They've been married a long time, and they're starting a new phase in their life.
I like that push towards the positive. That's a good thing. That's where we're all headed. That's where we're all headed. So the last group, I don't know who you are because I don't know how you were formed, but the last group that hasn't shared, can you share?
I could share for us if you want.
Okay, thanks.
Okay. Very briefly, because most of the things that have been said have been sort of reflected from our group. And it was very comfortable for me because Kathy Goodman was the first person I ever met when I walked into the Pink House, who greeted me so warmly. And Anne was one of the first people I met when I started taking classes in strength training. So that's been a real plus. But we all agreed that what it came down to is there are a lot of stresses, but a lot of it comes to the isolation. I call it the disconnection. And we talked a little bit about the things we try to do and reaching out and taking advantages of opportunities and where there are other people around. But it's really the people connection that is very hard to replace for us at this point. And it has effects on our physical things, concerns about financial issues and things like that all fall into it, but they're sort of ancillary to the isolation piece. So
yeah,
I think that summarizes it for the most part. Is that somebody else can add from our group if you want?
Kathy, you're on mute, just so you know. I think you're talking. There you go.
I just wanted to quickly add, I also heard a lack of self-care, whether that was exercise or, just taking good care of ourselves. And sometimes that can cause health issues like high blood pressure. So 2 of us in my group have recently been diagnosed with high blood pressure. So I've got my little blood pressure monitor right here. And I'm like, I've never had high blood pressure before. What is going on? And I think COVID has brought this on.
Yeah. So there are certainly higher degrees of stress, higher degrees of anxiety, depression, chronic illness due to chronic stress. High blood pressure is one. So it's often difficult to talk about the things that aren't fun, right? To really land in awareness of where you're out of balance. But if we don't, we can't take personal responsibility and realize if we allow ourselves to stay in that place, there could be some real consequences, some real health consequences, mentally, physically, emotionally, socially. So it's not the happiest topic, but without the compass of awareness and a real deep, heartfelt desire to want to change, it's very difficult to sustain any kind of long-term change in your life. So hopefully in sharing, you both realized, or you all realized, that there's a lot of commonality. You're not in this alone. We are more powerful as a community, and just talking about the challenges out loud is very cathartic and can be very powerful because it's a sense of purging, right? A sense of purging. So I'm going to move us back into some slides, and I'm going to rip through them pretty fast because I'd like to maybe do another breakout. We'll check before I do, because we'll look at time. But this, I'm going to take us into screen share again. So give me a second. There we are. Share. And I think we are back on. So this thing called stress is real. World Health Organization has now said it is the new epidemic of our time. And that 3 out of 5 people, a Gallup recent survey said that they have no awareness or any true coping skills to deal with it. And we know stress is inevitable. We cannot avoid life, but we can definitely become more aware of how it impacts us. And that's part of this next little section, is to give you a real clear understanding of the mind-body connection and what's going on and why we need to pay close attention to this stress dynamic. So if we look at life-altering events, of which you have all been through, and they show up in many different forms: a diagnosis, a loss of a mother, the loss of a job, COVID, they create and supersize stress that we already feel. So the reality is we are in unusual times. Stress is accelerated. We all have different and unique coping skills. We process things differently. And I think that's important for you to realize, because we're all unique and different. We have a different DNA. We come from a different family of origin. We have these, what they call high life impact events that really shape who we are today. So if you're that person who has a hard time self-regulating when you're anxious, what I'm here to tell you today is there's hope. You can train your brain to become more self-aware. We're already doing that tonight, and developing coping skills in high stress situations during conflict or whenever stress shows up in your life. So you can, in fact, build resiliency muscles. And we've been doing it a little bit. We have been pausing and breathing. We have done this life inventory. Where am I out of balance? Taking time to really get connected with how you're feeling, sharing your emotions and thoughts with other people, not holding them in, but rather having discussions around those things, so that that can relieve and help you identify where you might want to take action. We look at stress, and often it comes in different shapes. So there's something called eustress, which is good stress. That would be like nerves when your grandson is getting ready to do his first recital. Or it might be you preparing for a big presentation or a big dinner party. You get those butterflies in your stomach, and that's great stress. Then there's that long-term chronic stress. And that's the stress that is like putting on a wet blanket, and it's been on your shoulders for so long you forget it's even there. And that's chronic stress. And then we look at the picture, and we often find ourselves being triggered all day long. And we have different ways of coping with triggers. And I'll talk about those briefly, but I love this picture because I think a picture is worth 1,000 words. And when we think about our small group discussions and what I said earlier about how is stress showing up in my life, how is it impacting me mentally, physically, emotionally, the quality of my life, my performance, my interaction, not only in my own mind with myself, that self-talk, but how I show up for my family, how do I show up for my friends? And so learning how you are adapting to stress and how you can shift and build those resiliency muscles is where we're going to move next. And if we think about the 3 major types of reactions, people tend to fight, flight, or freeze. And I'll just let that land for a second. When you're triggered, something doesn't go your way and you explode, and then you're often regretful of your behavior the next day. That's the trigger. And do you have a certain tendency? And sometimes people say, I do all 3. But that trigger sometimes is an automatic response, and we're on autopilot. And so the opportunity is to begin to identify when you're triggered and to notice what's happening in the body and to begin to regulate. So if we move into what will be probably my most dense slide when it comes to facts, and it's only because this is so important. And I really want you to understand the connection between the mind and the body and the heart. Not one without the other. It is how we show up in our entire body, our heart, our minds, sensation. So what happens when we get up in the morning is this amazing instrument, this organ called our brain, goes on high alert, and it's scanning, scanning, scanning. It's scanning to make sense of the world. It's scanning to keep us safe. It makes every decision that we put into action starts in our minds. So for example, if you get up and the alarm goes off, your mind will help you decide, do you hit the snooze button or do you get out of bed? So literally, when life is smooth sailing, you're walking on the beach, everything's fine. Maybe after you've exercised or had a great conversation with a girlfriend, the mind is at a calm state, but that's not where it stays. So we need to be aware of those triggers. And sometimes our ability to pause, when we go back to the pause and process, is how can I take a moment and just breathe so that I'm seeing things more clearly? Because when we're triggered, what happens in the brain, and this is crazy, but it may land for you in a way that you're like, wow, I didn't know that, is the frontal cortex, which is where all of the self-regulation, it's sort of the logical thinking, we can pro and con, we make sense of things, we're able to pause and sort of process through in a normal way. When we get stressed, and it can be chronic stress, it can be trigger stress, most of the blood flow, 80 flowing to the frontal cortex. So what you can imagine with that is if this is not getting blood flow, it's not working very well. And you may have heard of the amygdala hijack, which is this part of the brain, which I'm touching on my own head, lights up like McAdenville. And if you're from Charlotte, you know that that is a pretty bright place during Christmas. So that starts the alarm bell firing. So this causes a chain reaction, which can spike cortisol, that stress hormone. Adrenaline levels often result in that sort of shallow breathing or rapid breathing. Your heart rate will go up. You might even start sweating. So those are indications that you are triggered. And I just want you to be aware. And it's hard in the heat of the moment to even be aware of that, right? So there's got to be the of pause and breathe, right? Pause and breathe. If you don't, what happens is a lot of things are affected. Clarity of thought, your ability to focus, to concentrate, to include your ability to process logical information, your ability to be objectives impeded. So if you can think about a time where you've been stressed and you just trigger and your emotions go crazy and you're like, I don't know what the heck I said. And then I woke up the next day and I felt really not so great about my behavior. You were triggered. You were triggered. But we do have this capacity to take a moment and recognize the body symptoms, right? What's happening in the body, understanding now intellectually what's going on in the brain. If we start breathing, just breathing, we're beginning to send blood flow back so that that can begin to allow us to function in a way that is more logical. So the long-term impact, and that's really when we're triggered, but the long-term impact of this stress that hangs around like that wet blanket that we don't even know we're carrying, what that can begin to impact, and this is why it's such a serious subject, is that can affect your sleep. It can cause anxiety, it can cause weight gain or loss. It can trigger unhealthy behaviors, unhealthy coping behaviors, drinking, smoking, things that just aren't optimal for your health and well-being. It can impact your mood and your outlook. It can affect your relationships, and it can absolutely, stress has been completely identified as one of the most aggressive accelerator pedals for chronic conditions. So you don't have to get stuck in this anxious state. You can train your brain to become more self-aware and really build those coping skills so that you don't pull the trigger. Pausing and breathing. And it's that simple, but often the thing that we forget to do, and it's free and it doesn't take any real physical work. Just, all right. All right. So we are coming back to this slide in a group share in just a second. So this intrinsic motivation, and this is for everybody on the call and for you guys that are dropping off early. I just want to make the distinction that we paused a lot tonight and we processed a lot tonight, maybe more than you have in a while, using the techniques to breathe and pause and feel your body, your breath, asking powerful questions that maybe you've not asked before, talking in a group about stress and things that are out of balance, maybe something to do regularly, but maybe there has been this sense of relief and awareness on how you might be able to continue to do that. And this intrinsic place is when change, and this is how long-term change really takes root, is when it begins in the heart, the desires of the heart. And you have the courage to take action because you realize that the quality of your life depends on it, not because you're trying to get some goal or compete for some outcome that's outside of yourself. These are these intrinsic things that motivate you from your heart. And that's where long-term change can really happen. And it's where sustainability has a higher probability of actually lasting, meaning change. So this is the last slide, but I am going to go backwards for those of you who have the time, because I like to kind of leave it and tie it up in a nice little bow. And this strategy 4, and it came up quite a bit tonight, is all of this disruption has really created a big boulder in my life. And that boulder can represent many things. And we've talked about it. You know, any life event that's been altering for you and your family, and in this case, the world, COVID, right? But our capacity to pivot. How can I not get stuck staring at the boulder? How can I think about a way to pivot? And that pivot's requiring some behavioral change, some mindset shifts, so that I can begin to think about healthier ways to cope. And we certainly have actually integrated some of that into the presentation tonight. And the recap and reminders as you are signing off early or even moving into the next session, my call to action would be take a look at this slide and think about, what can I do? What can I take with me, and begin to really think about that, integrate. And the first strategy was pause and breathe. Check out to check in. Take life inventory. I mean, who taught us how to do that when we were young? But we certainly can begin to be more mindful as we get older. We can begin to do more introspection. So those powerful questions really allow us to get a greater sense of where we are. It allows us to take that compass inward, to take this check-in, to figure out what's out of balance. And then this is a really hard one, because we all want to be in control. Our brain scans for threat. We're trying to make sense of the world. We want to be in control. But the best way to gain control is to let go of control. Focus on the things that you can control and let go of the things that you cannot. Ask for help. Call in the cavalry. Lean on your tribe. So incredibly important. We'll talk a lot the next session about the rumination of thoughts. So being a witness of what's going on in your own mind and suspending judgment, right? At the beginning, we were kind of listening to the voices in our heads, and how can we stop this rigid or judgmental thinking and lean into a place of compassion, gratitude, beginning to move our mindset towards deficit into abundance despite life's circumstances. And that's going to require us to be patient. It's going to require us to be open-minded and open to new possibilities, and to have this capacity to reframe our thinking. That's making those intentional pivots, and then focusing on progress and not perfection. And I'm just going to flash this slide up because I am just a big believer that we need to stay awake to how we're feeling. We need to practice gratitude every day. We need to show ourselves compassion and grace and stay curious and open-minded. We need to let go of the things we can't control and focus on things we can. We need to lean into hope. And when you need help, ask for help. And realize that life is not about striving for perfection. It is really about enjoying the journey and noticing how much beauty is in the process. So when we can let go of that shiny thing called perfection and really look at things as they truly are and begin to find the joy in what is here and now, that's when I think we are able to let go of a lot of things that weight us down. And for those folks who had to jump off, I just really wanted to send you home on a hopefully more positive note, and have everybody that's on the call think about the one or two things in this list that you're like, wow, I could start doing more of that. And as a result of doing one or two of these new things, it could really change the quality of my life. And, we think about, women, we are caregivers and we tend to caregive to the world and we'll put the oxygen mask on everybody else and we forget how important it is to put it on ourselves. And some of this deeper discussion probably made you realize stress is not a great thing. And I don't need to live with it. It doesn't need to rob me of joy. I just need to not fight it. I need to become familiar with it. And then I need to figure out how I can dance with it in a more graceful way. And I can do that by having compassion. I can do it by not traveling this world alone. I can make small pivots that are progress, right? Not striving for perfection because it is an illusion. And this awareness that we've done in the small groups, I really hope that's a catalyst, right? That's the intrinsic catalyst that makes you go, you know what? I better breathe and pause because I want to play with my grandkids. I deserve to be happy. So I need to practice self-care. I don't need to ruminate with these thoughts over and over again. I need to call somebody and get out of my own head, out of my own way. And I don't need to do that by myself. And this beautiful sense of community that we can create, even though we are physically not together, we are together, right? We are together. And we can simulate this sense of community, leveraging Zoom, old school phone calls, right? But just don't let the physical distance rob you of the ability to still be in community. And I just think that those are some important things to kind of share from my heart to you as women. And this place of compassion needs to start at home. And if you're not good at that, you are a role model for everybody that's watching the way you treat yourself. So your children are watching, your grandkids are watching. So treat them to modeling behavior that will have a very profound and positive impact on them. So sometimes if you can't do it for yourself, you got a lot of witnesses that are watching you. So do it for the folks that you love. Make sense? So it is 7:33 and I am in no rush. I don't have a husband. I have 4 children. I have nothing waiting for me except for a glass of Prosecco, which I will have when I get off this call. So I'd love to just open the floor for a couple of minutes. We are going to move into this world of self-care. The next session is all about that. And maybe you can tell me how well you did on the call to action with your pivots when we get back together. But I'd love to open the floor and we can go rogue. You can share what your small group discussed. Or if you have another thought that's on your heart, I'd love to open the floor up just for some discussion.
Well, I have something that I would like to share. In our group, Selena said something that everybody liked, and it was the question about what do you do to regulate? Can you hear me?
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
And she said that the first thing she does is she asks herself, is that thought the truth? And so I just wanted to, that Selena said that, and I just wanted to share that with all of you. I thought that was great.
It's funny. I did a meme this week because I love to write. And I mean, and the meme was question your own thoughts. Is the story that is in my head truth? And so questioning your own assumptions, like almost stepping outside of yourself to be a witness to your own thoughts and to pause to say, is that really true? Is that serving my higher good? Or is that just an old story that I need to hit the delete button on? So very powerful comment for sure. And the brain is, the control center. So watching how we speak to ourselves is very important because the person we hear the most our entire life is our own voice. And so it's like, let's make this place a happy, healthy place to live. And that is a lot of the thinking. Other thoughts?
Well, in relation to that, there's in addition to being part of a mindfulness meditation, guided meditation group through the cancer support community in Ann Arbor, where we did live. I also use the Calm app. I like that really well. And the thought for the day a couple of days ago was, it's a name I should know, but it's well, not James is the last name, I think. Anyway, the thought was the best way to cope, the best gift to us in dealing with stress is that we can choose what thoughts to keep and what not to think about. Then that's a paraphrase because I don't have it in front of me, but that's exactly what you were just saying. Essentially, we can.
Yeah. I mean,
choose.
often we move into, I need to change my behavior, but it all starts with thought. Thought moves into this place of emotion, and emotion often triggers, our behavior, and the way we behave, triggers action, and that's how we show up in the world. And so if we can go backwards, Mary, to your point, and be more aware of our own thinking and question assumptions and really get more clarity around what is the truth that I want to hold on to, what is the one that I can let go of. And that is mindfulness, being present in the moment, awake and aware, connected to my body, not in judgment, from a place of compassion and curiosity. I have this internal conversation with myself. Other thoughts?
Well, I have another one, which is I want to say how grateful I am for having the opportunity to do this. I agree that Leslie is just doing an incredible job with that, and I don't get to actually be in person at the Pink House because I'm not even in North Carolina. But when we are there, we're busy and we're in Salisbury, so it's still a chore going into Charlotte. And I am just so grateful to still be included with this, and between this group and the group in Ann Arbor, which is the cancer support community of Greater Ann Arbor. I just think you people that help us cancer survivors are so wonderful. Thank you for doing this.
That's great.
That is beautiful. That is beautiful. So, and I'm not stopping the conversation, but if you have something you'd like to say, I'll open the floor back up. But I was just thinking about, the symbolism of these Zoom presentations and how they can really impact us. And, my hope for this evening was that, we learn, right? Things land in our heads first, and that's part of processing information and learning things. That creating awareness is such an important part of the pause and process journey. But I think the ability to really be in your body and to feel the connection with yourself, and then to also know that we're in community, although virtually, we are still connected. I mean, my heart has been moved multiple times tonight, just with each of you sharing your testimony or a challenge or a struggle. And it's holding this sacred space for one another in whatever capacity we need to do it through this COVID dynamic, and knowing that we're not alone. I mean, just to be able to express yourself and to be able to pick up the phone and know that you've got the Pink House and you've got friends and family, who your tribe is. And oftentimes we think resiliency is putting on armor and just kind of bulldozing through life. I've got this. And resilient people are the ones that take their armor off, that are vulnerable with themselves and are willing to reach out for support. And that's real resiliency. And it's not the superhero that you might see in your construct of that word resiliency, but it's really a very gentle, soft heart. And I'm just always so grateful to facilitate these sessions, because at the end of the day, how are we going to spend our time? You know, we look at our calendar, and that's a real indication of how we are constructing our lives. And I would just encourage all of us to make sure we're constructing time to connect with our own hearts and with the hearts of other people, even if it means pivoting and doing it in a slightly different way. And, you know, tonight I'm just honored to be able to share what little knowledge I can share in a framework and way that maybe is meaningful for you guys. You try to take complex subjects and simplify it so that people, you guys, can sort of process the information in a way that you can really take something with you and move it into your life. Because if it stays up here stuck and it doesn't move into action, it really won't have this beautiful effect of changing the quality of your life, and in many cases making you feel better from the inside out. So yeah. Anne, were you going to say something? I saw you reach forward. Or anybody else?
Oh,
You got something?
yeah.
Yeah,
I
Anne,
just
you can unmute yourself, Anne.
go ahead, Ann.
You go, Pam.
Oh, okay. What I was going to say is what resonates with me by your saying that, it just kind of hit me in the face, that one of the biggest things that I have had to realize is the way the days roll one into the other. And I would go, especially at the beginning of all this, when we really were in the lockdown thing, but it's continued. But I would go 2 days without talking to somebody because I live by myself. You know, it's different than if you have family members there or whatever. And I would go, why am I so down? And then, you know, after I thought about it a few minutes, I thought, I have not talked to anybody in 2 days. Duh. You know, what are you going to do about it? You can't, what you know, you're hoping your kids will call and all of that, and they do, but they don't always necessarily call when you need to call.
Yeah.
Or that friend isn't there when you need them to be there. But they don't know they need to be there, and you don't know that you need to get hold of them so they can be there for you. It's this whole circular process of, you know, what you're talking about, where I am. But that isolation thing, really monitoring how long has it been since you've talked to a friend or talked to you know, a family member, or especially if you're in some of those days where you're not getting out and going, you know, I think we limit what we're doing like we're supposed to, but that really makes a difference. Not only the, you know, get out walking and doing all that, but the actual especially if you're a people person, like I think probably all of us are, or want to be, and we are in our own according to our personality. But I'm a people person, and I'm having trouble with that because I don't, like you said, your tribe. I need to pull some tribe in and pull people in more, I've realized, than I'm doing. You know, and I can say I'm doing okay, but then something like that happens for 2 days and I go, duh.
It's a good epiphany, Pam. I mean, that's the pausing and slowing down and kind of taking inventory. And,
Right.
you know, the assumption is, I wish someone called me, but at the end of the day, the reality is you can call somebody, right?
Right.
You can.
Right. It goes both ways.
Yeah. Yeah.
And
It's like Groundhog Day.
others don't know your needs. Only you know your needs.
Yeah. True. Yep. Groundhog's Day can feel, we can almost get numb, right? We can get numb, and the days run together and we almost numb out our emotions. And that's why it's so important to pause and wake it up. What do I need? Stay awake and aware so that you can choose to live each day with greater intention, not on autopilot, right? Not on autopilot.
Right.
One thing that it came to me was I found something the other day that I had stashed on a list of things. And when I was in treatment, you know how people say, well, what can I do? Can I do anything? Please let me know if I can do anything. And I really was independent, and I didn't want to be so sick or weak that I wasn't handling things, I guess. I don't know. But, and I really didn't need a whole lot of help, but there's a difference between that and maybe wanting the internship. And so I finally learned to say, there's nothing I need right now. Fortunately, I have support, but can I put you on my list? And so I had what I called my angels on call list.
I love
And
that.
I called them my angels on call, and I put them down because the truth was just what you said a minute ago, Pam. A lot of times people aren't there. And I remember one day I needed a prescription picked up, and this wasn't when I was sick. This was when my husband was a real patient. And I had to call like 5 people, and I really didn't feel comfortable leaving him, and I need to have the medicine. And before somebody was home, do you know what I mean? That was available. But that was such a sense of security to me. And I only tell this, it might not help other people, but I think of that even in terms of it. I'll jot down, oh, I need to touch base with so-and-so now, because I find that I get so disconnected that I don't even think to reach out in certain ways. And people that we saw in our community, whether it was an exercise class or church or community groups or a committee you were on or a walk in the neighborhood, we don't have a connection with them right now. And so we need some kind of connections. But that was a big help to me. And I've passed that on, for mentoring and stuff.
That's powerful, Adrienne. It's almost like the parachute, right? You might not need to pull that second cord, but just knowing it's there gives you a sense of calm. So that is a very powerful.
And sometimes when I felt isolated and I looked at that list, I thought, oh, that was enough I had to do, was to look at it and feel like I'm okay. There's plenty of people here that have said, if there's anything I can do, so, and I try to, reach out to others for that, but it's hard to manage that, And
you mentioned something that would fall into this category of having an artifact, which is a visual reminder that you are not alone, or a picture of someone that loves you, that's high visibility in a spot in your house. It might be a poem. It's just something that grounds you and brings you out of that space when you can sometimes swirl in your own head. But I love this angel list as a visual to have wherever you want to put it, and you pull it out when you're feeling alone, because that is a visual reminder, and the brain is very visual. So those things that we see around us can also be artifacts and very good reminders that can help lessen the anxiety. So very
now
good.
When I have a friend or something that I'm sending a card to, I always put my phone number and my email address, so that, you say if there's anything I can do, but then you've got to find how to get in touch with them and all this. So I always put that, to make it easier because you're confused at the state that you might need help,
Very true.
That's good.
So John Kabat-Zinn, who is one of the leading researchers in mindfulness, says the best time to check in is in the morning. Because if we stick it to a ritual that is already occurring, and we all have rituals in the morning, things that we do, and if we can just take a few moments just to breathe and scan and notice and feel, then we're going to be awake, much more aware, and we can move through our day with greater intention. And if the mindset is a little wobbly, that awareness might help you reframe, get grounded in gratitude, reach out to somebody if you're not feeling well. And that begins to set your day off on a pace and in a more intentional direction. And it's really a great opportunity in the morning, because you've got all this daylight ahead of you. And it can be a kind of a pivotal point that you can go, wow, I'm feeling out of balance. I feel anxious. And in that awareness, what can I do to create a different trajectory for today? So, all these little pearls of wisdom, but, it's a matter of what's going to feel right for you, what's going to work for you. But certainly my hope is something tonight really stuck with you, that will be meaningful, because action is where it's at, and that's where change happens. So I'm just hoping I'm moving you to intentional action.